Hello and welcome to the Manchester is Red podcast. My name is Stephen Railston and we're recording on a sunny Friday afternoon in Manchester, and with a bit of a special episode today because the international break is usually quite dull, so we're going to digest some Takeover chat from this week. We've got an exclusive interview with Manchester United fan and light heavyweight boxer Linden Arthur, and we're also going to have a bit of a Q&A session towards the end of the podcast, so that should be a bit of light-hearted fun and my opportunity to grill Tyrone Marshall and Rich Fair, who obviously alongside me. Tyrone, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Stephen. I'm good. Counting down the days until this international break ends.
It's a long slog, isn't it, this week? It's went very, very slow. The football will be needed when it comes back. Rich, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Looking forward to a weekend watching Wrexham with the Fosters, both in my hand and in goal. So, yeah, bring it on.
What a signing, Rich. Are you delighted with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. I love any story where I can get away with writing about Wrexham for the Manchester News. So there will be a piece Saturday morning looking back at his last spell at Wrexham that led to Sir Alex Ferguson signing him for United as well. A bit of background on that for any United fans who are interested. All five of you out there.
I thought
Rich's own podcast doesn't go on, Ty. I was just going to say Rich's podcast doesn't get enough mention on this.
Doesn't.
This
no, he's moonlighting.
If you are of the Wrexham persuasion, head across there, and no doubt you'll have a few exclusive lines up, won't you, Rich? So, excellent.
You put a lot of pressure on me there, but yeah. Of course,
yeah. Speaking as a Shrewsbury fan,
Red podcast is always the priority.
Speaking as a Shrewsbury fan, yeah, we don't hear enough about Wrexham these days, do we? Flipping heck. Non-league team, lads. Get over it.
The underdog story.
Get over it.
The underdog
anyway,
story.
I thought you'd be Wrexham Lager loyal, Rich.
Yeah, I mean...
Anything for a good pun.
Anything if we're winning. Yeah.
I mean, we've just had 10 minutes of Wrexham chat, so I'm going to insist we move on before we go on air. So we are moving on. We're going to discuss the takeover, Ty. Obviously, a big week on social media. Supporters, that's all they really want to talk about at the moment. It's the big story. Do you think we're any further forward, really, with this takeover process? There was obviously a soft deadline in midweek with Sheikh Jassim and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who obviously both missed that deadline in the end, it transpired. So what's the latest on the process, really? Because it's becoming a bit of a farce, it seems, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, I was speaking to people, when was the deadline? Tuesday night? No, Wednesday night. Oh, I can't remember now. I think it's Wednesday.
It's been a long
week.
week.
Yeah, so speaking to people yesterday who variously described it as a circus and a soap opera. One suggested they should put it on telly like Coronation Street. It was that ridiculous at times. I think it is getting further along. There's going to be second bids from Sheikh Jassim and from Sir Jim Ratcliffe. But the issue is we still don't really know what the end goal is. And I've written a piece this afternoon where the intro is basically that there isn't really a void where speculation falls here because it's being played out so publicly that we do kind of know what's going on. But there is still a lot of speculation to it. And you speak to people kind of in the industry and on the fringes of the takeover, and everyone is speculating about what's going to happen because we just don't know. It's 4 months after the Glazers released that statement confirming the club was on the market, basically. We still don't really know if they're going to sell or not. And people who are more kind of attuned to the machinations of this than we are have conflicting views on it as well. I spoke to people yesterday who are adamant it's going to end in a full sale. Others who still see this as potentially them laying the groundwork for staying. The issue is that they set this $6 billion price. They're not going to get it, I don't think. I was told that neither of the bidders for a full takeover, Ratcliffe or Sheikh Jassim, left meetings last week thinking it was a £6 billion business. I think they were both a little bit underwhelmed at the cost for the club when you consider Old Trafford and Carrington needs renovations as well. So do they lose face by accepting a lesser offer? Do they take minority investment and try and stay? Is this all? It's been suggested as well to me that this is all a ploy and stringing out the deadline and making it look like this huge race for United is all a ploy to basically get better lending rates to lend more money and to stay. I mean, you'd think, having reached this point, they cannot possibly turn around and stay. But you wouldn't put anything past them. As someone said to me yesterday, it'd be one way to get a new stadium if they did decide to stay, because the fans would just burn it to the ground. And you can imagine that there would be riots if they did that. There's I think it's an open secret now, and we've written it and other places have written it, that there are divisions in the family. Joel and Avram, I think, would quite like to stay. The others, I'm told, would have sold at 3 billion and just want to get the hell out of there, basically. Not that they ever are here, the other four, but they're very happy to cash in their chips and take the money. But we don't really know what's going to happen next. I mean, once these new bids arrive, I presume we will get to a preferred bidder status with one of them, but even then, there's no guarantee it goes through, although you expect it at that point. But we still don't really know. And I think it's suggested to me that I think it's probably true that Rain are probably a little bit under pressure here. That someone close to the Glazers said in November that this will end with Ratcliffe or Qatar going head to head, and I think the Glazers would have known that. The whole reason for appointing Rain was to drum up more interest, like they did in Chelsea when they got 20 odd bids and so much interest. The reason for appointing a bank like Rain is to flush out the interest you might not know about it. You might not know about. If the Glazers had said in November, we're going to sell, we don't need an estate agent, basically, we'll do it privately, they'd have approached Ratcliffe because he approached them in the summer, and they'd have approached Qatar because Qatar have been interested in United for the best part of a decade. Beyond that, there's no one really new, beyond sort of hedge funds and American investments. So, Rain haven't really come up trumps with flushing out any major interest, and at the moment they haven't got the price to 6 billion. So I think there's still a bit of posturing going on, which is why it's been played out so publicly to play on the ego of Sheikh Jassim or Ratcliffe and force them to up the price, or to still try and flush out another bidder for full control. But I'm not sure they're gonna get there. We had the Finnish guys, Ziliakis, is it? Confirming his interest.
I was going to say
yesterday.
I couldn't remember his name, so
Yeah,
I'm impressed that you pulled
something
that.
like that.
I didn't really take
I'm not
much
sure how you
attention
say
to
it. Thomas Ziliakis. Yeah, I think it's, I think the view with that one is it's a pie in the sky, maybe a bit of a publicity stunt. He's doing his sums on United's market value, which is 3.1 billion. The Glazers would laugh that out of town. It's not going to happen. And even at that price, his idea, I think, was to get each fan to pay $3. I did the sums, and that's 650 million United fans paying $3. I mean, it just ain't going to happen. So yeah, I think that one is ambitious and can be ruled out. So I think it's still between Ratcliffe and Sheikh Jassim, but it is a slow progress. And the biggest issue is that we still don't really know how it's going to end or what the Glazers' intentions are.
I mean, with the exception of probably Chelsea in recent times, but that was because of the Russia situation. I'd say as a general rule, takeovers, you don't really hear about them that much. It's certainly not this public when you look at Manchester City and Newcastle over the last 15 years. If you had to place a bet, Rich, and someone give you £10, it was your last £10 in the world, and they said, is it going to happen or is it not? Do you think the Glazers will relinquish a majority share? Where would you place your money? And I guess it is so important that they leave, isn't it? Because it feels like this is such an opportunity that can't be wasted. This hasn't happened since they took over the club and became majority shareholders in 2005.
No, I think as Ty mentioned earlier, I think they just have to sell for their own principle and their own sanity now and their own safety, really, because the fact that they've gone this far with it already and entertained the prospect of selling the club, you've just got to follow through now. United fans want change, and there's a lot of supporters who are still divided on who they want the next potential owners to be, but they're all unified in the fact that they do want new owners and they want just a fresh start, really. And I think for the whole sake and benefit of the club, that has to happen now. It needs to be seen as a fresh start, a fresh new era, because for as long as the Glazers are here, United will continue to be straddled with debt. They'll continue not to put in their own money, and the issues with stadium renovation and with having to overhaul the team, to develop the training ground facilities as well, will only increase as well, and they'll only be losing ground as well on the likes of Newcastle, who have their own takeover now. United aren't just competing with like Man City. There are other teams now who all have money. You see other teams in the Premier League as well who don't necessarily have sort of limitless budgets, but they are just well-run clubs, and they are all closing the ground on Manchester United. I know they've made strides this season and they are the best of the rest, but they need to really just improve in so many areas of the club already, and I just can't see that happening if the Glazers do stay in charge. So I think that they have to pursue with this sale now. The outcries and the protests will only get more ferocious, you'd presume, if they were to sell. We've already seen Manchester United have a match postpone that Liverpool game because of protests against the Glazers, and you really wouldn't rule out further action of that sort of degree if there was no more development or if they backtracked on the sale altogether. So although there's always going to be these concerns and cautiousness until the actual sale takes place, it would be just a whole new level of protest from United fans, I'm sure, if the sale didn't go through, because they have made their feelings so clear. They've been making their feelings clear for 18 years now. They do it every single game. Whether United win, lose or draw, United fans will protest the ownership of the club, and I just cannot see any scenario in which that will ever change. You know, the Glazers will be protested against until they sell, and yeah, I think it just makes so much sense for them to actually cash in now while they can, make a huge profit on the leverage buyout they had, and give United that fresh start, because if they don't, then, like I said, it will just be mayhem with the United fan base.
It is funny when some suggest that supporters have only been protesting when they've not been winning, but it's very much not the case. They've been doing it for 18 years now, so it's been consistent. Ten Hag has kind of insisted that this process hasn't impacted on the team or on him, but let's face it, it will, won't it? Because the summer transfer window is approaching. So it needs to be wrapped up really sooner rather than later, doesn't it? Because the season's coming to an end. It's March now. April's next week. And Ten Hag needs to know who's in charge, because he needs to make his plans, doesn't he, for the summer and for the next stage of that rebuild.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's probably one that's not had a huge impact so far, but it is going to, the longer it drags on and the closer it gets to the summer. We're at the point now where work is starting on transfers and laying the groundwork for transfers, and it's just, you know, whoever is in charge, even if it's still the Glazers, they are going to spend this summer. They will spend big on a striker, but you know, there might be a difference between what the Glazers want to spend and what Qatar want to spend, and I don't think it would be huge given financial fair play and United's kind of issues and balancing act around that. But there probably will be more money to spend, even if, you know, if it's still going on in June or July, even if a takeover's in process, it becomes an issue in terms of like who's making decisions, the chain of command, freeing up funds. It's, you know, there's potential for there to be issues, even kind of as minor as that if there is a takeover. But like you say, you need, you know, the manager wants clarity. He wants to give targets clarity. And that's, you know, that's what they need. They need to know this is happening. But there are various ways it could start to impact Ten Hag. He said a week ago today with his Fulham press conference that his focus, you know, other people were dealing with that. His focus was just on the games, which is fine at the moment. But as we get deep into April and May, that will begin to change. And certainly when it comes to June and the transfer window's open, if there's still a lot of uncertainty floating around, then it does become problematic. And like I say, if a takeover's in process, who's signing the checks, who's making the decisions, who's got access to the accounts, you know, what's the chain of command for things going from Richard Arnold to the Glazers or from Arnold to Qatar. You know, these are all sort of minor issues that are going to become a problem. And contract renewals are the same. You know, I think there's two that are particularly pressing in David De Gea, whose contract is up in 3 months, and Rashford's whose is next June. But I don't think you'd want to go into next season with Rashford in the final year of his contract and risk losing him for free when he's, you know, pushing £100 million asset now. I think they'd want to get that one done. I think there was an expectation that at least one, if not both, would be done by now, and they're not. You know, I've been told that contract talks are still ongoing despite the takeover issue, but I think there's an acceptance now that the process has changed, and it's gone from, you know, in November and December and January, this was a case that it was being dealt with by Rain and the Glazers, basically, and it had no material impact on United. Now we're seeing Richard Arnold have to meet the Qatar delegation, meet Jim Ratcliffe, you know, Colette Roach is there doing presentations. It's having a bigger effect on people at the ground now at Old Trafford in terms of their workload, and, you know, that's going to have a knock-on effect in terms of getting contracts done and things like that, because there's only so many hours in a day, and when more and more of your hours are taken up in dealing with a takeover and getting the books in order and the financials in order and the things that potential buyers want in order, that's less time to work on things like transfers and contracts and the staffing side. So, you know, I think it's only inevitable that the longer this goes on from here on in, the more that the material impact on Ten Hag and the team will be.
Bruno Fernandes was given a contract extension with no permanent manager at the club, wasn't he? Ranić was in charge. So I'd expect contract negotiations to continue despite the takeover talks. Yeah, I definitely expect that. Rich, regarding the board then and the kind of higher figures at the club, obviously Richard Arnold has been CEO for quite a long time now, or a year and a bit. You've got John Murtagh there, his football director, who's done a pretty good job. How do you think they'll be affected? Do you think they could maybe stay in their positions immediately, or do you think any new custodians would look to change that? Because, as I've said, by all accounts, they've done both of those. They've done quite well, haven't they, over the last year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah, again, that'll just come down to the individual bids, really, and who's potentially successful, whether they want people they've worked with before or who they trust in those positions. There's always flutterings. You always hear rumours of sporting directors from other leagues who might one day move to the Premier League or whatever. You always hear sort of rumours of, it used to be Monchi, didn't it? Was it at Sevilla? And you get Michael Edwards. You always get these.
Paul Mitchell's the big name, isn't he now? Paul Mitchell from Monaco.
Of course, yeah. So you always get these names who have excitement, and they've bought exciting players in the past. But the truth is that United have been, in what they've set out to be, they have been successful under this new structure. I mean, if you look at last summer, if United had been under new ownership last summer, who do they buy differently? They maybe spend even more and try to get De Jong, but they still buy Antony. They probably buy Martinez. Casemiro ends up coming. I don't really see what they would have done too much differently, no matter if they had different people in charge or more money. They spent £225 million last summer, so it's not a case of United need to spend more or to be maybe even targeting different players, because under Ten Hag the hit rate's been pretty impressive. Okay, maybe with different ownership they could have gone big in January and got a better striker in than Weghorst, but there's always going to be a limit on what United can actually do across the course of a season. So I think, to be fair to them, Arnold and Murtagh are doing the job that they were brought in to do, and United are seeing some success on the pitch. They're certainly making strides forward, and it was just important that those two came in as part of that restructure at the end of last season, with Woodward going in particular. And it just did feel like, okay, the ownership's not changed, but there did seem to be a new sort of ethos and approach from United all around. People who have designated roles and you know exactly what they're there to do. People who are in charge of transfers, people who do commercial stuff, people who do the marketing, people who are involved in recruitment, and others who stay away from it, whereas before it was quite muddied. So I think going forward, whoever comes in would just need to have some honest and frank conversations. Obviously, it wouldn't be down to Ten Hag, but I think he'd have a say in how are you finding operating in this system? Is there things you'd like to change? And the indication is that whoever bought Manchester United potentially would want to keep Ten Hag. They'd want to reward him potentially with a new contract as well, and build upon these solid foundations. So I think you'd have to ask Ten Hag how he's found working it, what he'd like to change as well, and just take all that feedback on. But I think, in terms of United going forward, there's still so much up in the air before we can get too down into details on that. But I do think that sometimes you have to take a step back and say, they are doing quite a bit right at the moment. They are starting to rectify some of their old mistakes. And again, as I mentioned, even if they have this takeover, it's not going to be this magic one solution where everything changes overnight. Yes, there might be a fresh revitalisation and spring and a step of people around Old Trafford, but I don't think it will be that sort of drastic overnight change that maybe some people are envisaging.
It's definitely going to take time, 100%. We'll leave that there for part one, and we'll be back in a moment for part two. But for the beginning of part two, we've sent our producer Seb Parkinson down to the boxing gym to interview Linden Arthur ahead of his fight tonight in Bolton against Boris Crighton. Back in a moment.
Linden Arthur joins us on the Manchester is Red podcast, the Manchester United podcast from the Manchester Evening News. Delighted to be joined. Linden, first and foremost, your connection with Manchester United. I know you're friends with Brandon, or you're related to Brandon. What is that connection with Brandon Williams?
Yeah, just close, Obviously, I see him as family. He's like your little brother, like a little kind of thing. You got to try and keep him from staying out of trouble and whatnot. Not that he does get in trouble, but you know how the little brother, big brother relationship goes.
When Marcus has been through his sort of rough period last season after he'd had that back injury and he had the operation, how did you do a lot of physio and fitness? Did he come to you for any advice?
No. These boys have got Man United behind them. They don't need me for advice. they've got the best of the best. That's why he was able to come back as good as he has this season. When he tells that he's now a monster, probably one of the best in the world right now, finishing and playing football. So, you know, just what I will get from that is the desire and the resilience to come back through adversity, kind of thing. A lot of people, a lot of fans would have been saying last year, let's get rid of Marcus. Season later, you know, form is temporary, class is permanent, as the saying goes, and that's what he's shown there in abundance. So I take from that, I learn from that, and you just gotta continue, be resilient, be consistent in training, in mentality as well. And you can show that you will get through anything.
You've obviously grown up as a Man United fan. You know, we couldn't be more in the heart of Manchester here. You've seen the transition from the Alex Ferguson era to what we now is the Eric Ten Hag era. From your connection with the United players, with Brandon and everything, like, what's the vibe been like around the club?
I imagine it's been hard. We've gone from being the best at the very top constantly season after season to then finishing 6th and 7th and 8th and stuff like that, and when a scrape second league with Solskjaer coming in. It's obviously I can imagine it's been hard, but now Ten Hag's in and he's taken over. He seems to be having a structure in place, what everyone's listening to. He definitely knows what he's doing, and everyone believes in him. I guess that's what it is, having a manager or a team that you believe in. He believes in the team believes in him. They're listening to him, as you can see on the pitch when it happens. So I imagine that's, as it was bad, it's now turning good, and I feel like there's a lot of good days ahead for Manchester United.
Yeah. Athlete to athlete, do you ever speak to these guys as a professional on like a physical level rather than just how was the game?
No, do you know what it is? Do you know what it is? We train every day. Athlete to athlete, I know what it's like to train every day. And when you get away from your football or your boxing, the gym or the football pitch, you probably don't want to speak about it. I understand that. You know, when I'm out, a lot of people come up, it's like, oh man, give me I box every single day of my life, night and day. Let me enjoy myself when I'm out. So I understand that from that perspective, so I don't really try and bring it up too much. Yeah.
What do you think of the club this season, like under Ten Hag? What you know, from the dirge that we've seen under previous management? And
well, we've won a title. People want to talk about the title. It's a little title, but it's the start of a title. We're in the knockout stages. Is it or the quarterfinals of the Europa?
Yeah.
We're in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. We're still in the league. We've got a cup. Probably going to finish in the top 4. It's probably one of the best. Well, it's the best season we're having over for the past few years. So I'm happy. I'm excited to watch United again. I don't like. It used to be a time a few years ago or a couple of years ago, even when I turn the team on and be watching just because I'm a fan, rather than I know we're going to win this game. It used to be. I'm excited to watch United. It wasn't like that anymore, but now it is again. I got the excitement back to watch the team.
As a fan, what do you think about what's going on in Old Trafford at the minute, like behind the scenes?
Put it this way, I'll be happy if these Saudis buy us. Yeah, I'll be happy when that happens. Since Ronaldo left, and he was talking about the kitchen still the same as when he was there, stuff like that. I believe if they come in, they'll have us in a better stadium. You know, an upgrade of the stadium, so to speak. You know, they'll upgrade everything. They'll get better training facilities in and stuff like that. You know, we'll be competing with the likes of City and all the other good football stadiums and facilities. I believe it'll be a lot better if that happens.
Would you prefer I think it's Qataris that's sort of the most like potent one, or Jim Ratcliffe? Would you prefer the Qataris over Jim Ratcliffe, or would you just happy for anybody?
Just come in and sort us out. Just come in and give us some sort of upgrade. Come in, upgrade us, get the players feeling fresh when they come in. You know, and I think that everyone will get. They've got the team spirits there now, but you know, collectively when you're coming in, when you're walking into it, obviously it's not like boxing. When you come in this gym, it's old-fashioned. It's an old-fashioned gym. It's got real history in it. You can see it's got real history in it, just through how long it's been here, and you can just see it's an old school decor of, you know, it's painting on the wall. There's holes in shit. You know, it's not a very classy gym, brand new gym kind of thing. That gives it its aura. Whereas in a football, I imagine it's a bit different. You walk into nice shiny stuff, the best of everything kind of thing.
Have you ever had any of the United players in here? Brandon, Marcus, they ever been down?
I've had Brandon in here. I've had Marcus and Brandon talking about having a fight, having a spar. Yeah, think I was gonna train Brandon. Or I was gonna train Marcus actually. Yeah, just banter, obviously. But Brandon's got a good whack on him. I'll tell you that, he's got a good right hand on him. But Marcus is long, and I've seen him do the jabs when we're messing about and stuff. So, it'd be funny to get them in here, having a little spar.
Anything about Wayne Rooney? What about you get him in here?
All right, look, Wayne can box, guy.
Yeah.
If Wayne wants to come in there, I give I show Wayne that. But look, Wayne was probably the best player I've seen play for United, best striker. I'm a big fan of Wayne Rooney when he was there. So, I've not met Wayne ever, but I would love to say hello to him if I ever seen him.
As a United fan, looking at this current crop, what do you think that they can win, and what do you want to see us win under Erik ten Hag?
I think we can win the FA Cup. Obviously, I believe we're going to go to the FA Cup finals. It's a derby. It's always a hard game. We've beat them once this season already, I believe, and I think we can, with the being of the scene of the game being the FA Cup final at Wembley, we can win that. Europa, we nearly won that under Solskjaer anyway. I believe we can win that. The league, I don't believe we'll get that. Obviously, it's Arsenal and City. But next year, most definitely, we are definitely going to be contenders of it. I believe so. I think under Ten Hag, we get a good striker to finish up top. That's not taking nothing off Weghorst, but I believe with an OSIMHEN or a Harry Kane on the end of Bruno's and Marcus's crosses in the box, Sancho's, we'll get a lot more goals.
Is that who you want to see come in, OSIMHEN or Harry Kane?
Yeah, OSIMHEN more, but I won't mind a Kane.
I won't mind him.
Yeah, I won't mind him. little 100 mil, I won't mind him.
So lads, Linden Arthur will be fighting tonight, and he's a big Manchester United fan. He's discussed all things United there. He's been asked about transfers, so we're going to discuss them a little bit in this section. And of course, Harry Kane became England's all-time record goalscorer on Thursday night, and we did a panel, us three, earlier in the week where we gave our opinions on which striker would be the preferred target this summer for United, and I think I was the only one who went for Harry Kane. So we'll have that bit of a debate now. Ty, you went for Victor Osimhen, didn't you? And I know we've talked about it a bit already on the podcast, but what are you thinking behind that, really? Because my thought process, it kind of boils down to one point. I think Kane is a guarantee of goals, probably for 3 years in the Premier League, and I think that's worth quite a lot in that division. He's a banker, he's going to turn up, he's dedicated, he's a fantastic professional, and he's always going to be there in the box, and he's going to put it in the back of the net. What more can you want?
Yeah, I mean, when it's hard to argue with any of that. And when you put it like that, he is an obvious target. He's going to cost a fortune. I think it'll cost the best part of 100 million. But he is a brilliant player. England's record goal scorer now. I would love to be able to watch him week in, week out. I think he's just fantastic, and the career he's had and the trajectory and that journey from all those loan spells, I think is an amazing story. And he would certainly be worthy of leading the line for Manchester United. But my one concern with it is this, this idea of long-term planning. And I've mentioned it before. And he's 30 in July, and you've got the spine of that United team. Come this summer, you'd have De Gea, who's 32, Varane would be 30, Casemiro 31, Eriksen 31, Fernandes is 29 in September. You'd throw in Kane, who's 30. Your spine of your team who are all 29 or over, and really you'd sign Kane for 100 million. I mean, signed Casemiro for 70 million last summer, but in the next 4 windows at most, you'd probably need another world-class goalkeeper, world-class centre-half, maybe 2 world-class midfielders, and another world-class striker to replace Kane at the end of it all. And it's not an endless supply of money as much as fans want it to be. That's just not the case. And more to the point, it's not an endless supply of players either. So I think there needs to be...
You're having your Alan Hansen moment. Instead of you can't win anything with kids.
You can't win anything
with oldies, you're trying to say. Yeah, that's what you're trying to say.
I mean, I think they clearly could, but if they sign Kane, that for me is a 2-year team, maximum 3-year team. If you sign Kane for £100 million, for me, United would have to win the Premier League or the Champions League in the next 2 years to make it a success. Otherwise, no matter how many goals he scores, it will have failed, because they'll have spent 100 million on Kane, say 70 million on Casemiro, 42 million on Varane, These are players they were signing at the very peak of their careers. You can't spend that amount of money and not win anything. Even if you finish second in the league twice, it needs to produce the biggest trophies within the next 2 years. And maybe it will do. And if it does, Kane's a fantastic signing, don't get me wrong. I just think that OSIMHEN's 6 years younger than him. It might take him a year to settle into the Premier League, but he looks to have all the attributes to be a Premier League striker. And you sign him, and you would expect to get 8 years out of him leading the line for United. You can focus on signing a young midfielder, which I think is really pressing. I think midfield is a bit of an issue coming down the tracks, given Casemiro and Eriksen's ages, and the fact that the backup in Fred is 30 is one reason why I wouldn't be going for Sabitzer at 29, because I think if your 5 first choice midfielders are all older than 29, then just have a look at Liverpool and what's happened to Liverpool for an example of how quickly things can change in that regard. So I think they need to be looking to sign a younger midfielder, a Bellingham or a De Jong or a Caicedo or someone like that. But yeah, that's the only reason that tips me towards OSIMHEN. Like I say, when it comes down to the players, maybe I would lead to Kane. If they were the same age, maybe I'd lead to Kane just for his Premier League record and the fact he is a guarantee of goals in this league. But there needs to be, not necessarily as fans, but I think as the people making the decision in the club, there's always got to be a succession plan. And I think if you sign Kane, you're already onto the succession plan for Kane, especially when he's had the ankle issues he's had. So it's purely for kind of long-term planning purposes that I would go with OSIMHEN. But I would certainly understand it if they went with Kane.
I remember watching Kane in the Europa League when he was first emerging, and he got put in goal one game.
Yeah.
And then there was a bit of a joke on Twitter.
He scored 2 goals or something like that.
No, was it in that game as well? But he blew up, didn't he? Just absolutely blew up. And
it was on like ITV4 or something. I vividly remember watching it. I can't remember the game, but I think I'm the same as Ty on that. I do get that there's a trainer thought Kane could be like the Van Persie signing, who's the missing piece of the jigsaw, and United instantly become much better. And he is the only striker maybe that can come in and rival Haaland, in the league, and just if he gets a service at United, he's the main man. He links up amazingly, and probably other than Haaland, those two are the best 2 strikers in the world right now. I really do think that, but it's going to be a club record fee. It'll be prolonged, protracted negotiations. Ten Hag wants his new signings in as early as possible. He wants them on the tour. He wants them bedded in. We saw this season, Casemiro had to be signed almost as emergency after those first 2 defeats, and United had already lost 6 points then. If you go and get a title race with City next season, maybe even Arsenal, you can't afford to be dropping points early on. You need to have your players in place straight away. And I think obviously OSIMHEN will be difficult to sign, but it could almost be like job done for him at Napoli. If he gives them the league title and they get to the Champions League semi-final or final, then there's more. It'll probably be easy to sign. He's already said he wants to play in the Premier League. He will have done his job there for them. I think they'll be quite amicable. They'll command a big fee, but he will have given them what they wanted so much already. Whereas Kane, it's just having to deal with Daniel Levy is going to be real problematic for United, and they're so reluctant to sell the best players, particularly to Premier League rivals. And even though he's got a year left on his contract, I don't think it's as easy as United saying, here's a load of money, let us have him, because I just don't think Tottenham will give up that easily. And it's been their own failure themselves that they struggle to replace players, and I can see them holding on to him for as long as they can before they finally have to cash in. So I think Kane would make sense as a short-term hit if the fee was lower, but as Ty said, you've got to plan for the years ahead, and OSIMHEN looks like the next player who, if he doesn't join United, he will be the one who gets away, and he'll be similar to Haaland, he'll be similar to, Sesko's another option we've seen, but there was that narrative around him when that fee was agreed. And again, if Bellingham went somewhere else this summer, it would be another one of those ones who's got away that United had the chance to sign and never did.
I think if Kane doesn't move this summer, he'll stay at Tottenham for the rest of his career. Because obviously he could leave on a free transfer, couldn't he? But I think because of his relationship with the club, he'd probably just sign a new deal. He does kind of remind us of Shearer, actually, Alan Shearer. And his style now is his years are progressing because his legs have gone a bit. He's not as fast as he used to be. I was going to say something quite rude there, but I'll pass on that comment because it's a PG podcast. I was going to say there's a bear in the woods, but I'll leave that out. Because Shearer started to lose his legs, didn't he, at the end with his injuries and stuff, and his game had to evolve. But he was still scoring plenty of goals, an abundance of goals. I see that in Kane.
It's all that
really.
link-up play, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kane isn't just the best striker of the Premier League, but he's sometimes the best playmaker.
Yeah, if you put him alongside Anthony and Rashford, he'd be deadly, wouldn't he? What kind of fee then do you think Napoli would accept for OSIMHEN and them lads? Because you've discussed Kane maybe in the region of 100 million. Daniel Levy, he's going to be difficult to negotiate with. But as you've just said, Rich, Napoli aren't going to be much easier, are they? They're not going to want to let him go.
No, but I mean, how much they always? I mean, De Laurentiis always comes out and says that they've got loads of money. I remember every transfer window, United used to be linked with Koulibaly, didn't they? And they were always saying he's got cost like 100 million or whatever. And did he go to Chelsea for just under 50 million in the end, I think, Koulibaly?
Past his best mind, I'd argue, at that point, wasn't it? Yeah, I think they got the best years out of him.
But with add-ons that could take it...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
They won't be getting hit.
Wasn't it 33 million, yeah. Yeah, so... I mean, if they win the Champions League, if they win Serie A, they'll have even more funds and they'll be keen to keep the nucleus of that side. So they're both going to be, you'd say, sort of club record signings, both of them. If you to get
they've got a chance in the Champions League this season. How well they've played, and they're on that side of the bracket.
It's always good for them, isn't it?
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, and then potentially only one match beat an elite team over one match is very doable. And you know, it's a real difficult one because it's hard to say. There's so much permutation between now and then. But you'd say that if United want to sign an elite striker this summer, they're going to have to spend a world record fee, a club record fee, and probably a Premier League record fee on the player as well. So that's again why you probably get more bang for your buck with OSIMHEN, because you've got the longevity. He's got, as soon as you buy Kane, it's like buying a new car. His value will only decrease because you never will to sell him for that fee again. Obviously, he can give you that short-term hit, and he can potentially be the missing piece of the jigsaw. But he has to be. Do you know what I mean? If you're spending that much money on Kane, he has to win you the champ.
He's a Rolls Royce, though, Rich. He's a Rolls Royce. Is there any Renault Clios out there? Or we're looking at any other players that we can throw into the hat? Because I know we keep talking about OSIMHEN and Kane. Are there any other strikers that kind of pop into your head? Rich, you talked about Sesko, but the problem is that deal's done now, isn't it, to Leipzig? That boat's gone.
There's a theory that United could usurp it and just agree to pay more and sort of hijack it.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, I'm not sure about that. You see the usual names. Vlahovic, who, I mean, I don't see... I mean, I don't watch Serie A football, I'm not pretending to. I'm wearing a Parma jumper.
What a disgrace.
But doesn't mean, like... I don't watch him enough to know how good he actually is and how much success he's been at Juve. The fact that he's potentially up for sale indicates that maybe he's not delivered as much as they wanted him to. You look at... I mean, last summer... Ten Hag tried to buy Arnautovic. Yeah. I mean, you can't rule anyone out under Ten Hag's transfer philosophy. You might as well just go to the Eredivisie and look at the top goal scorers list and have a punt on any of them.
Rich was trying to say they should sign Alexander Mitrovic earlier in the week, Ty. I strongly disagreed.
I don't remember saying.
I mean, there's very few. Like, I mean, Ten Hag likes Gonçalo Ramos, but he's only had one season with Benfica. He's back on the bench for Portugal last night.
Bit of a flash in the pan, isn't he? Yeah.
Maybe a flash in the pan, yeah, lots to prove. There's the guy who missed that chance for France in the last minute of the World Cup final, Randall Kolo Muani, I think, who's doing pretty well for Eintracht Frankfurt. An option, but again, he's much more unproven than OSIMHEN or Kane. I mean, in terms of Premier League strikers, the one for me, which won't happen for fairly obvious reasons, but if you were looking for someone else other than Kane, it'd be Ivan Toney, who I just think looks elite.
Would you bet on it, Ty?
Bet your house on him.
Bet your house on him, yeah. You know, for obvious reasons at the moment, that ain't going to happen. But I do think he could probably play for a top six club because he looks.
I suppose that there's the argument, isn't there, that when you say who should United buy, it's they should buy whoever Brighton want to buy next as a striker or something. I know they've got Ferguson now, who looks really good, but United have to be sort of reactive. They have to buy players who've done something somewhere elsewhere, but teams maybe like Brighton could be a bit more proactive and take those gambles on the lesser known players. And I suppose there's an element out there that United's next elite striker might be someone we don't even know about right now because they're just going to be under the radar doing the good stuff.
I think there's a wider problem of
for Denmark last night, who plays for Atalanta, Rasmus Højlund or whatever. You can imagine he'll be one of the next ones to watch. He's only 20 years old, but I suppose in an ideal world, I can't see it happening because of the money, but United would buy someone who can help them right now, and they'd also get someone who is maybe a bit more of a project who they can train to be that elite option in the years ahead.
I think there's a wider problem of that there's actually a lack of goal scorers out there in the market.
Yeah, there is.
You look at all the Premier League clubs. I mean, the majority of Premier League clubs actually want a striker this summer. I mean, Chelsea are going to be in the market for a striker, and they've got money for fun. I was talking to a Wolves fan down on the train to Cheltenham last week, and they're desperate for a striker, and they're not exactly short of money either. I think
and
Newcastle
Arsenal
maybe
as
could
well.
be.
If they're back in
Exactly.
the
So
there's not a lot of,
and there's a lack of those kind of
nines.
players, isn't there?
Yeah,
so,
I mean, a lot of your goal scorers these days are like your Salahs, basically. Wide players. Rashford,
and that's a good,
for example.
That's a good point that Ty makes, though, that United also need more goals from the other wide men, because Anthony, Sancho, they just haven't given enough to United this season. There's different reasons for that, but United need more goals from everyone. They don't just need more from a striker. That will obviously be the main way to supplement it, but they just need more goals.
Yeah, if you break it down, the percentage that Rashford showed out is the bulk of it, really, isn't it? And it does need support from Steve.
There's so much money in the Premier League that the top clubs can afford almost like Rich's idea of buying an OSIMHEN or a KANE and then buying the next one at the same time makes a lot of sense. But clubs so rarely do it, and the big clubs just don't need to take those risks. Brighton signed Caicedo and McAllister. And it to a degree, it's a risk because then they're completely they were unproven in European football, never mind the Premier League. United don't really need to take those risks. They can let them go to Brighton and then just pay 70 million to sign them. And
I suppose they did with Palestri and Ahmad.
Yeah, maybe they do. Maybe they do at times. But I think other clubs like Brighton and the clubs we talk about being clever do it more often. And I think Van Dijk's the classic one that, when he was at Celtic, everyone could see how good he was. No one, within a couple of years, Man City and Liverpool were bidding 70 million for him. But no one signed him, apart from Southampton, when he was available for, £10 million? Because they could afford to take the risk and play him every week. Whereas the big six clubs thought, he's doing well for Celtic, isn't he? It's a big jump. We'll let him go to Southampton and then see. And then think nothing of paying 75 million for him. The big clubs have got so much money that they can afford to let the rest of the Premier League try him out first, and if it's a success, say, all right, we'll have him now, which is
can afford to be lazy.
They can afford to be lazy. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah,
laziness pays.
We'll end that section then, because I do have the privilege of grilling Rich and Ty. Like I said, I won't be grilling, but we'll be entertaining for a question and answer session in part 3. So we'll be back in a moment for that. So we're back for part 3, and as promised, we'll have the Q&A session along, and I'll just read out the questions, and I presume Tyrone and Rich have now got them up on their screen, just in case they get caught off guard. But feel free, gents, open the floor, answer whoever wants to take it, and we'll begin with a question from Millie, who asks, since the World Cup, United have been in great results form, but overall I feel their performances have slowly regressed. A fair comment. Do you think this international break has come at the right time for United, and what will Ten Hag's focus be on during the break? Who's answering that one?
I can go if you want. I do think performances have maybe regressed a little bit towards the end of that break. I think it's as much to do with fatigue as anything else, though.
Yeah.
United played 12 successive midweeks between the World Cup and this international break. They're going to play at least the next 4 midweeks. I think if they get to both finals, they'll play every single midweek, apart from this international break, between December and the first week of June, which is just incredible. It could be a 65-game season, so I don't think it's any surprise, especially when you see that Ten Hag doesn't really rotate that much. He's playing his best players, Fernandes and Wout Weghorst, every week. So, the tiredness is going to have an impact, and I think we're going to see it have more of an impact. We're at the stage of the season now where teams just grind out wins and performances might look less attractive, and it wouldn't surprise me if that happens with United. The key, of course, is to keep finding a way to win.
They looked tired against Fulham, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah, it's just consequentialism of United just need to get over the line, however, don't they? I mean, like Ty said, since the last international break, they played 25 times, which is just absolutely obscene. And again, at least another 15 matches this season, could be another 19. Everyone is just knackered, and there's always going to be a tail off in quality when you're playing that much. And, that's just going to be, the quality is going to suffer when the quantity is that high. So it's just a natural sort of regression. But I think you can flip it and be maybe a bit of a happy clapper and say, well, at least they've come through it relatively unscathed. I know there's that massive blip at Anfield, but in general they did sort of cope with it well. I think the only complaint on my part is that there isn't enough rotation, like Ty said there. It's just, you understand why managers have their favourites and stick to a core of players, but they are in danger of burnout, and my only worry is that United come back from the international break. We've seen Fernandes play for Portugal. I know Shaw got sent off for England, Rashford has missed out, but there's got to be this core of players who haven't even had a break over the international break. So they're just going to be even more fatigued, and as long as United can still win these trophies and can still finish third and still have to play to guarantee Champions League football, I just can't see them rotating either.
There's no coincidence Ten Hag has a meal with Ferguson and Rashford pulls out of the England squad and is seen jetting around New York. I don't think there is some correlation there. We'll move on to a question from Leanne, who asks, who is the best Manchester United footballer you've seen play in the flesh who didn't fulfil their potential? It's a bit harsh, fulfill their potential, so we'll say academy player, should we? And Rich, you took a lot of trips to Lee in your time.
Throw me under the bus.
Has anyone really stood out in your mind where you thought, wow, that was, you know, a really, really talented youngster?
I mean, it's difficult to say since I've been covering United for the MEN. It's been nearly 6 years, 5.5 years now. So I'm not going to say anyone's not fulfilled their potential because they've still got so much of their career ahead of them. I mean,
yeah, that was my point. Yeah.
The youngsters I've watched, the oldest of them will probably be 23, 24 now. So they've still got loads of time to prove us wrong. I suppose the obvious ones, it's always a bit disappointing that Angel Gomez never got more of a chance for United. There was a combination of reasons. He's hugely, hugely talented. Everyone knows he's got everything really, and we saw it when he went to Boa Vista on loan. He scored a goal from the halfway line. He looked to be catching the eye quite a lot. I'm not sure how he's doing at Lille anymore. I know he started quite well, but I think he's not been sort of pulling up too many trees there. So I think maybe just a bit disappointed that Angel Gomez didn't fulfill his United potential is probably a fair way of saying it, because he did look like he had absolutely everything. And obviously, the older generation will say Ravel Morrison, because everyone who played with him says he was technically incredible. He had everything you could ever ask for, but didn't have the maybe attitude, application, or the opportunities to actually go on and fulfill that. So there's always so many cogs in all of this. There's never one reason why someone doesn't go on to have the career hoped, but I suppose that Angel Gomez was a real disappointment that he didn't get more opportunity at United, and the fact that he actually left.
We've got one from producer Seb next. We're basically just asking, what is the scenario when there's a breaking news story on desk? What happens? Is it as simple as, Ty, you could be at the shopping with your wife and you have to drop the bags and run back to the house? Or there is four of us that cover United, isn't it? So it's a bit more simpler than that.
It is sometimes a bit more simpler than that. Yeah. Like you say, there's enough of us when it's a major story. If you're not working, you feel a bit obliged to jump on. But if it's kind of in that grey zone where you're not sure, then and I'm not working, what I tend to do is just pretend I haven't seen it. Yeah, when you're working and things happen, it can be chaotic. I don't think I've ever had to drop my shopping. I tend to get the shopping delivered. Avoid such scenarios.
Talking about laziness, Ty. Talking about
really?
Laziness pays, lads. I'm telling you. Yeah.
That's the biggest controversial point of the podcast, isn't it?
That is. Wow, I didn't have you down for that.
You'll get this, lads.
I thought you were working class.
I've got a 3-year-old, lads. I do not want to be tracking a 3-year-old around the supermarket. This will come to you. There's enough battles to be won at home.
Just throwing all the biscuits in the trolley.
Yeah. And some stories, you get breaking stories where you've got no idea that they're coming, and others where you've got an idea that they're coming. And the obvious example from recent years that I can think of is Solskjaer's sacking, which happened, or Samuel got wind of actually on the way back from Watford, and we were coming back from that Watford game when they'd lost, and I think we all knew he was going to be sacked. So it wasn't. It was a breaking news story, but it was one you were aware was going to happen. And I think Samuel was driving back with one of our colleagues from another publication, and I was on the train back, and that that's pretty chaotic in terms of who's doing what and what stage things are at, and especially for Samuel, who was in the car at the time. When that went on all weekend.
We had that before the World Cup when I went down to Fulham away with Chris Wheeler, and we were driving back from Craven Cottage after United just won, and we get about 40 minutes out of London, and then the Ronaldo interview drops with Piers Morgan. and we have to go to Burger King for an hour and a half, 2 hours to file some copy.
But more importantly, Rich, the pick and mix story is the big takeaway from that trip. Never mind Ronaldo.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was actually happy to see United knock Fulham out of the FA Cup. It was sweet revenge in many ways, a sour taste in their mouth. But I think as well, I mean, as Ty said there, like when Mourinho got sacked, that was the first day of my week's holiday, so I had to like log on and do a podcast. And yeah, Solskjaer as well. I was out on a like a family day out in a nice country park, and then I got the notification saying Solskjaer's been sacked, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to have to go home and do a podcast in a minute. So it's more just the case of that, sometimes you've got to drop things, but we're fortunate that we've got a good team where, like you said, we always have with our rotor anyway, someone sort of designated to do United that day in. So it's never too desperate, but sometimes you've just got to adjust your shift. And I think for any budding football reporter, whatever, that is just almost the key takeaway, that you've got to be prepared to work antisocial hours.
Yeah.
It's just part of the job, and I think we're all used to that now. That maybe from the outside, it can be a bit of a shock that sometimes you just cancel your plans last minute and have to adapt to the scenario. But that's one of the only negatives really of doing such a dream job.
It is important, obviously, I'll add to switch off as well when we do get holiday breaks, and obviously there is a temptation, isn't it, to always be by your phone. But I remember last summer I deleted Twitter for 2 weeks, did not install it again, and it was life changing. All the transfer news I was kind of missing out on. My friends were saying, have you heard about this? Have you read about this? And I was like, well, I've uninstalled it, and it's pretty cleansing actually. I'd recommend it, Rich, if you can do it this summer.
Twitter was a better place without you as well, mate.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Great 2 weeks.
Great
2 weeks.
Don't have to read your tweets for 2 weeks. Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, I know you hate to talk about Wrexham, but I've booked 2 weeks off to go to Japan in May, and my plan is hopefully Wrexham have won the league by then. I don't have to worry about checking scores and stuff, and I can just purge my social media and just have a 2 week cleanse, like Ty said. So we'll see.
We swap shifts, didn't we, Rich? So you can watch Wrexham on the final day, so hopefully they get the job done and get promoted, of course. We've got another question from Mohammed, who says, we've seen many Manchester United players go into management, but from the current crop, who do you think would make the best manager?
I had to think about this. I'm going to say Christian Eriksen. Because I always think that the most sort of intelligent, effortless, often quite quiet players, his brain, the way his brain works, he's always thinking 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. He's just always switched on. He's so creative. He really understands football. He has such a knowledge of the game. He's played in various leagues as well. He's played in Holland. He's played in Italy. He's played in the Premier League. He's played internationally. I think the way his mind works, I think he'd be really, really good. And the midfielders just seem to make the best managers. So
it's a very fair shout.
I feel
Ty, what would you say?
I feel like the obvious answer is Casemiro, just for his passion for the game and the way he reads the game. But it is true that it's becoming harder to actually predict who will be a manager, because you also need now to have a passion to do it, because players are making so much money that they don't need to do it. And a generation ago, 20, 30 years ago, players would retire and would need to do some work to they wouldn't have enough money to basically do nothing for the rest of their lives. Whereas now, that's part of the reason so many went into management and coaching, because they had to and it was all they knew. You don't really have that now, so you need to have a passion to do it. And you look at England's golden generation, for example, and I think we'd have all said Neville and Carragher are managers in waiting, and haven't been really. Neville, that very brief stint at Valencia, whereas you'd say Rooney, Lampard and Gerrard probably not, but they've all gone in to be managers. So I guess it depends who has got the fire to do it. And
so you're saying Eric Bailly?
Eric Bailly, I think, future Manchester United manager.
Could you imagine Martinez as a manager? He'd popping off in the change room, wouldn't he? Be going crazy. I was gonna say for Ram for the similar train of thought as you, Ty. But then when I kind of look at it on the other side, he's got a young family. He retired from international football to spend more time with them, and I just kind of think football's give him everything. What more does he have to prove? He's probably just going to go and enjoy his life, and well deserved as well.
That's why you might see more managers in like the mould of like Mourinho or Wenger, or that Englishman who's League One in League One, Will Still, yeah.
I somehow couldn't produce his name, but he's always on Twitter every day.
People like that who've got no playing career, but are going into it A, because they need the job, and B,
There's
because
hope
they've got
for
a
us,
passion
yeah.
for it. That's it. Yeah. So you never know. You might see more managers who've actually got no playing pedigree to speak of at all, because the actual players just don't need the hassle, like you say, Stephen. They've earned enough and want to go on holiday and live a nice life rather than have that stress.
I do exactly the same.
Yeah,
Last question then from Mark. What does your gut tell you about what United will achieve with Ten Hag in charge? And obviously I'll let you both have a pop of that, because it's been a very impressive first season, hasn't it?
Yeah. I'll let Ty start on that.
I mean, this season, I think they will win another trophy. I think they'll win one of those cups. I could realistically see them winning both. Long term, it's very hard to call. You do feel like they certainly can win the league under him. It's such a competitive league to win now. City under Guardiola aren't going to go away. You still wouldn't want to count Liverpool out entirely. Chelsea have got to get it right, spending that sort of money at some point. Newcastle maybe at some point will be a realistic contender.
But you'd also look at, I know it's cliche and we say it most weeks, but that Arsenal blueprint does feel like one that United could emulate themselves, where they don't even necessarily have to have the best 11 individual players, the best sort of squad man for man, but if they've just got everyone in the right direction, fighting to unify for United and to win that league, and everything clicks, maybe one of the other teams has a bit of an off season next year, United do get the goal scorer, they say stay injury free relatively, then they could win the league quite possibly in the next 2 seasons. I don't think that is out of the question, but there is just so much mitigation. But I certainly think that he'll have another few seasons in charge of United, and that he will win more trophies.
Yeah. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Rich, saying it's kind of depends on what goes on around you. I mean, you look at Arsenal now, and they're obviously doing fantastic, but it has coincided with City's fall off or dip this season. They're obviously on the way back in the last few months, and Guardiola's system looks to be working now, but at the start of the season they weren't at their best, and they're bound to improve surely again next season. Guardiola will get it right, they've got the money to, and you can only see them kind of returning to their very best, can't you, next season? So it's going to be even tougher for United in the Premier League.
And that's what United have done this season as well, that they have made the most of everyone else in the chasing pack being off it a bit. United are the best of the rest because they've been so much more consistent than Chelsea, Tottenham, Liverpool and even Newcastle. So there's still maybe the element of a reality check that United, you could replay this season and United could finish 5th or 4th, because if one of the other teams had played better, but they can only do what they can really, and United have found that consistency and the ability to win ugly. So I think they've got real solid foundations now, but just because you finish 3rd, it doesn't mean next season is guaranteed to be 2nd or 1st. I think there is still a massive task in even retaining a top 4 finish.
I mean, there's optimism and hope for supporters, and I guess that's all they want. Last season was so miserable, wasn't it? And it's been very, very refreshing this season for everyone connected with the club. We'll end it there then. It's coming up 2 o'clock on the Friday afternoon, so the shift's taken over. Tyrone, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Stephen.
And thank you, Rich.
Thank you very much.
You still got any plans this weekend? Anything crazy planned?
Yeah, I'm going to see Hey Dougie.
As Ty smiles.
Hey Dougie live on Sunday.
I'm not even going to pretend I know who that is. I'm not even going to
take the flares and a few cans. Parents will get it.
I was going to say with the parents or something, or with the parents, Ty. You're not bringing them along.
Get the badge in.
Wrexham playing tomorrow, Rich, I presume?
Yeah, York City at home. What could possibly go wrong? All the eyes of the world on Ben Foster's debut.
Got them Insta-men.
Ben Foster masterclass incoming. Incoming, of course. Right, thank you very much to listeners as usual. Check her out on YouTube, Spotify and Apple. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend and take care.